Hi, and welcome to another episode of InstaVision. I'm Glenn Reynolds. Well, there's been enough disaster going on here at home that we tend to forget what's going on in the rest of the world sometimes. But there's still a war on in Afghanistan, and Michael Yon is still there covering it. Michael Yon's been blogging the war on terror since 2004. He's been covering Iraq, he's been covering Afghanistan. He's spent more time in both countries than probably nearly all the troops who've been there. Now he's in Kandahar province in Afghanistan, and we've got him on via sat phone to talk about what's going on. You can also see his blog, of course, at michaelyononline.com. Welcome, Michael. It's great to have you online here.
Hey, Glenn. It's been a long time since we've talked. It's really good to be back on the show.
It's great to have you here. So now, you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, it's been 7 years since you started this, and as I said, there have been a lot of troops who spent that long doing this sort of thing. How do you keep it up?
I can't quite make out what you're saying, but I think it has to do with, how long I've been covering the war. Right now, I'm in Kandahar province and with 4-4 Cav, which is Task Force Spartan, and we're in an area called Zari province. It's west of Kandahar, and we are in you might say the birthplace of the Taliban. This is very close to where Mullah Omar grew up. The fight is still very intense here, actually. So I've been doing missions, a lot of combat missions. Just got back from one a couple nights ago. We air assaulted into a very dangerous place. The village was completely vacated. It was kind of eerie, actually. Didn't see any animals, didn't see anything. Saw some footprints from people, some tire prints and that sort of thing. The village was laced with bombs. There was a lot of bombs. And in fact, in the first about hour of the mission, one of our soldiers was killed by a bomb. He was blown up. In fact, he was one of my tent mates. And then the next day, an Afghan soldier that was also on the mission with us was blown up. We didn't make it very far into the village because it took so much time to clear all the bombs. And so, we're making a lot of progress here, but in some of the areas like this one, the only reason we're going into it is because it is so intense. But a lot of the other areas are quite permissive. One of the things that concerns me about this mission was how long it took for the medevac to come to get our soldier out. We sat, after he was blown up, it took us, I'd have to check my camera data, but it took us about 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes to get to the landing zone, and then we waited there in the open for about 30 minutes for a medevac helicopter to come, which was, the medevacs are not very far away. They should have been there, on orbit waiting for us. But unfortunately, we've had a problem throughout this war of Army medevacs the helicopters don't have offensive guns on them, like miniguns or 50 caliber machine guns. And the reason they don't have those is because they carry a red cross on the side. And if they're wearing the red cross, according to the Geneva Conventions, they're not allowed to have offensive weapons. And so this medevac had to wait at Kandahar Airfield until it could get a Apache helicopter escort that came from Uruzgan province, which is a totally different place. We have a shortage of Apaches here, and we have a shortage of Apache pilots. And so what we end up with is a lot of patients who are sitting there on the landing zones waiting for helicopters to come in because there's no armed escort. Now, the Air Force Pedro rescues can come in. They're called Kazovacs, not medevacs, because Kazovacs don't carry a red cross, and they can carry miniguns or 50 caliber machine guns, and so they don't have to wait for armed escorts to come. But in any case, the soldier that was with us was very much alive when he was put on the helicopter, and then he died at the hospital. And he was very conscious for about 30 minutes sitting on that landing zone. It was very unfortunate, and something needs to be done about these medevac helicopters not having large weapons.
Well, that's very troubling. I'm glad we're able to get the word out on that. From the perspective of being there for a while, one thing you told me in an email earlier is that you feel that the overall situation in Afghanistan is a lot better. What's changed over the last couple of years?
Right. Glenn, you and I used to talk when I was in Iraq, and you recall it always looked like from the news that the sky was falling. And sometimes it seemed like it was when you were in Iraq as well. You see news here, for instance, the Peace Council, chairman, I believe, was killed yesterday, and so many other people have been assassinated. That those things, of course, make the news. The Taliban has been doing their best to do high media value attacks, and they've been succeeding. They attacked the U.S. embassy recently. We saw that got a lot of international press. Militarily, the attacks don't mean much at all. They're pretty irrelevant, actually. But from a media perspective, which also, of course, plays into the media military aspect in the long run, they were very effective. And we also saw that in Iraq for quite a while. They know how to play the media. So, but insofar as on the battlefield, I recall you and I did a long interview in about 2009, I think, when I was in Helmand Province, and I was saying on the interview that we need more troops. If we intend to succeed, we need more troops. Succeed in building a country here. If that's not your goal, then you might not need more troops. But if you want to beat down the enemies, like Haqqani Network and the Taliban and whatnot, then we needed more troops. Now we have those troops, and it's clear that we're making good progress, even though the fighting remains pretty intense. I mean, we get into a lot of fights here. And I'll probably see some in the next couple of days again. So, but we are making progress. We're coming into areas that we were not able to really go into before. The Canadians were beaten out of this area. This used to be their battle space, the one that we're in now. The United States took over it after the Canadians pulled out. The Canadians left only a training aspect, but the actual combat forces were beaten here, just as the Soviets were beaten here. It's a very tough area to fight, but we're clearly winning.
So you've been covering the troops now for like 7 years, and has there been a change in the troops? Is their attitude different, or the skill level now from when you started?
It's definitely a lot different. I mean, now there's so many veterans, and I've got so much experience as well. It makes all of our jobs on some levels much easier because, for instance, the commander of this squadron, he's a Lieutenant Colonel Mike Katona. This is his 5th combat tour. So, almost all of the officers, the senior NCOs and whatnot, have multiple combat tours. So, and that includes Iraq and Afghanistan. Many of them have served in both places. And so they're not, when I first went to Iraq in December of 2004 and stayed most of 2005, most of the people had never been in combat until they got, to that very intense mostly urban fight in Iraq. And so, the dynamic was much different. I mean, they did very well in Iraq, once they got their feet under them and started switching from, solely kinetic to counterinsurgency, which has had its own, it's a lot different here in Afghanistan. Of course, all the veterans, you hear a lot of people at home say, well, what people need to realize is that Afghanistan is different from Iraq. Well, everybody here realizes that 100%. But it's a completely different fight here.
What do the troops think about the drone warfare and all the drone attacks on the Taliban in Afghanistan and Pakistan?
I watch them all the time. They support us on our missions. Every time we do a serious mission, we have Reapers or Predators overhead. Reapers are basically very similar to Predators, but they carry more firepower and they can stay longer, and they have better optics. But people are killed, enemy are killed within like 2 miles of where I'm standing right now on a regular basis with Predator and Reaper attacks. So, we like them a lot. They do a lot of the work here. They can loiter a lot longer. They can watch targets for days on end by, swapping out from one to the other. They're very, very effective weapons platforms.
Well, you've been doing this for a long time. How much longer can you keep it up?
I can keep it up as long as, I'm strong. I've got my legs under me. I'm hitting my stride. I've spent about 3 solid years in combat. In reality, more like 4 years in the wars, but most of that was with troops. But when I'm in Afghanistan, about half of it is not with the troops. So, I'm going strong. Funding is not so good. People are not interested in the Afghan war so much. And, we've got almost 100,000 troops here. They're fighting like crazy all the time, but people, I think, are really tired of it. So I can keep it up. I'm very strong. I'm not sure how long the funding will last. So, if the funding dries up, then of course I'm going to have to pull plugs and go write books and that sort of thing. But as long as the people keep funding it, I'm still strong.
Well, I'll encourage people to hit your tip jar then. Last question, what can our viewers do to help the troops as this is going on?
One thing is just pay attention to what's going on over here. Read my website, for instance. I'm out here with the combat troops. My tent is nothing but combat troops. Since I've come to that tent, about half of them have left wounded. One of them was just killed. Pay attention to what's going on over here. Tell them that you're paying attention. They have a lot of care package type things already. They have a lot of stuff here. They don't really need candy and that sort of thing. But what they do need to know is that people are still paying attention and do care about the sacrifices that they're making, because, this is a very brutal fight, and they see combat every day.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, and we'll keep paying attention to what's going on there and hope we can have you on again soon.
Anytime, Glenn. Normally my connection is far better. I hope you can hear me much better than I can hear you. Something's going wrong with the moon spots today, I think.
Thanks very much, Michael. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. It is important what's going on in Afghanistan, and it does tend to get missed in the day-to-day news. But you can check out Michael Yon's blog for regular reports, and we'll get him on sometime when the spirits are working better, and we can maybe even get some Skype video. In the meantime, have fun on the internet. We'll be back later. Thanks.